I was ready to put a fork in my eye at a corporate job, and I figured if I'm going to work for an idiot, it might as well be me.
Yeah, it's true.
We decided that we needed to be deliberate about building a business and not just creating a job for myself.
There's a really good conversation for us to have about the challenges of building a team.
Almost all the problems we have are people problems.
I'm not establishing the type of culture that we want to have, and so I may just hire heartbeats. And we know how it goes.
We want these relationships to be as long-lasting as possible, right? When you bring somebody new in, you're kind of starting over to a certain degree of bringing them into your culture. There's a learning curve for them to understand what we mean by a quality project.
You have to make your core values memorable.
Success is not a defined point in time and space where we reach it and stop. We're always looking for ways to make ourselves and our company better.
Expert advice, practical tips, real-life stories. Have less stress, more time, and more money in your business. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor.
Tom, man, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I'm happy to be here. After we're only about 42 minutes delayed between the snow and the technical difficulties here, so.
Hey, man, it happens. You can never, and you've got kids. I mean, starting the day, you just never know what's going to happen. It's tough, and you got weather in Colorado. It's unpredictable, much like our teams, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. People and the weather, a couple of things that you can, I don't know, maybe we have more control over, we can at least lead people. I can't lead the weather, so.
Yeah, it's true. Well, sometimes we can lead people. No, I think that there's a really good conversation for us to have for our audience about the challenges of building a team, just from a, authentic point of view of like, it's really challenging, and there's things you can do to try to set it up to be right. But at the end of the day, people are people, and they're unpredictable, like you said. But first, let's just talk a little bit about your company and how you got started as a contractor. So Bunn and Sons, you guys do custom homes, custom remodels, design build. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So how did you get started?
I was ready to put a fork in my eye at a corporate job.
Okay.
That's a really short, sort of tongue-in-cheek explanation, right? But I had a mild background in the trades. My father is sort of I would have described as sort of a chuck in the truck kind of a guy. Like, he never built a business. We never worked together formally, but he did trade work for a good part of my childhood. So I kind of had an exposure to it at that point. They helped him a bit on some projects, but went in the Marine Corps after high school. Then after the Marine Corps, I was on the 10-year bachelor's degree program. And through that 10-year period, I worked a little bit of construction in addition to the geological consulting work that I found myself in. That was kind of the track of my college education. And, so I had been attached enough to the trades to be dangerous, probably is the best word to describe it. My what do we call my opus of the, like, my pre-professional contracting work was the remodel of my own house, and I learned a lot about how hard that was, anyway, in 2016, I decided to leave a corporate career because I just wasn't satisfied in doing that, and I figured if I'm going to work for an idiot, it might as well be me. And so at that point, my wife and I launched what was Bunn and Sons handyman services. So it was
Nice.
very modest. I think my first job was to replace a couple of posts on someone's front porch for $150 or something like that. I charged them,
Wow.
And then over the past almost 10 years, this August coming up in 2026 will be our 10-year anniversary of incorporation. We've gone through a couple of rebrands. We've grown. I got licensed. We decided that we needed to be deliberate about building a business and not just creating a job for myself. Mm-hmm. And through that process, we've evolved into pretty much a full service design build firm that has focused traditionally on remodels and additions, but we are starting to break into that new build market a little bit in 2026, perhaps. So,
love it. That's great. Well, building a business requires, it's changing with AI these days, but it does require to build a team, and that's a huge part of it. As you grew, tell us about the team that you've kind of assembled, maybe disassembled at times, reassembled. Maybe kind of give us a lay of the land here.
Yeah, I think we're on version 7.0 or 8.0 maybe.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of change. It's been very dynamic is the way that I would generally describe it. So when you I think that our business started the way that a lot of small contractors start, right? I'm in the truck out doing the work, doing the sales. My wife Brooke has been integral. Like her and I built this business together, but she was on the back end doing the bookkeeping and filing
all the administrative
with
work.
the Secretary of State, the administrative work, of course, yeah. And so the first our first like sort of team member that we could have called our own was a 1099 relationship with a guy that was effectively acting as a superintendent, right? First step was to sort of partially replace myself on site so I could step back and start to focus on some other things,
Sure.
And then that eventually morphed into, we bought a van. We decided to, we hired another guy under a W-2 relationship, right? Kind of properly structured things. So the team has gone through a lot of iterations. What it is right now is I have the W-2 team at Bunn and Sons. Our core focus is management, coordination, client experience, right? We're here to be the hub of all this information from all these different stakeholders.
Sure.
Much of the production work is done, basically all the production work is done by our specialty contractors, our trade partners, which are all 1099 relationships. But, so we kind of have that hybridized, partially W-2, but we use a lot of, we leverage a lot of 1099 relationships to actually complete the projects. And that's kind of including on the design side. And that's kind of what it looks like right now. Does that answer the question?
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you've been intentional about not having W-2 employees really out in the field doing the work. Is that right?
It is now, yeah. So we actually so we talk about the sort of the progression of this structure. The first W-2 hires we made were actually carpenters, right? So the guys that were doing.
I see that all the time. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Now, as we realized that a jack of all trades is not necessarily the best guy to be, what we saw is there was more value in having we were better off to have subject matter experts in each of the specialty trades to actually perform that work. And now our focus becomes less of having a jack of all trades carpenter under W-2 employment. It's now more like the focus shifts to who can effectively manage those resources. Let's give this person the tools to manage those resources, so that they can leave the trades to do their best work, right? To enable them, or we want to be an enabler, right? Is kind of the focus of that position at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got this hub of W-2 employees. You have really good specialty contractors that are your trade partners. That's got to be challenging in some respect of leaning so much on the trade partners. What challenges arise there? And obviously there's trade-offs at every point of the process, right?
Yeah.
But what are some of the difficult things about assembling that team? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them, loyal, I guess is the word?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think, that was a huge concern of mine when we started to step away from that. At one time I had 3 W-2 carpenters employed, right? So we kind of had a pretty decent little in-house production team with some guys who were pretty skilled at doing a pretty wide variety of things, right? They weren't electricians and plumbers, but all the carpentry or utility infielder stuff was like, hey, we got it covered, So I would say that, probably the biggest, there's a couple of big challenges that I think are ever present. The first one that comes to mind is, it's actually the challenge isn't so much with the trade partners of the employees. It actually becomes this internal problem of identifying who are we and what's important to us and what do I actually want to communicate to these folks so that they can be successful and I'm not upset at what they're doing or not doing, right? It's really easy to start, blaming people that didn't do things the way you want them done. Did you create the environment to actually allow them to do that?
Yeah.
So I think that it starts internally. I'm kind of a fan of Jocko Willink, extreme ownership,
Okay.
sort of a philosophy, right? Like I've never worked with echelon front, but but I believe that most problems are either they're solved either by leadership or people, which is kind of the same thing, right? Almost all the problems we have are people problems. So communicating identifying what you want your culture and your values to be, and then communicating that out to finding the right employees or trade partners who espouse those same cultural beliefs is a challenge, right? And then there's we've done a variety of things to try to solve that problem. I can't say that I'm not sure we'll ever have it completely solved, right?
Yeah.
But we've definitely made headway there. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you have to have the alignment on values. And it's a good point that I don't think enough people think about. Maybe they think about values and hiring for fit if it's a W-2 employee, but on the trade partner aspect, it's not just about getting the job done. You do have to have that alignment as well, because when you have to communicate, like you said, like if you're having to communicate regularly and often and have alignment on what you're communicating about, the trade partners have to be of the same mindset as you. And I guess that's it's interesting how you've structured it, where you were very clear that, hey, W-2, you are a part of the hub. And I like the three things that you said. Will you say those again, of what they focus on? Client communication, and what were the other two?
Coordination or communication. I could probably put it down to two. Coordination or communication, sort of one and the same. And then client experience,
Client experience, okay.
Like we're, as the general contractor, as the builder, we're hired as the single throat to choke here, right? And so a client is, we want all information from the client side and the trade partner side and the jurisdictional authority, right? Like we're kind of here to manage this whole experience. And so that's a top priority for my W team.
That's great. And then let's go through I want to go through like your qualification partner process for your trade partners, because that sounds like a really big, important aspect if you're going to be relying so heavily on them. How many specialty trade partners do you have? And do you have a bench of like, hey, they're not available because they took another job, so I got to go to this one? Like, what's your process for managing your trade partners?
Wow, those are really good questions. So the first one is sort of I have a tendency to get too far into the weeds and the details, and it's like,
let's get it. Let's get all the dirty details. And
I don't want to bore people. But
no, it's good.
We'll start with one of the most effective tools that I've found, and we kind of did this about a year and a half ago. We went through. Are you familiar with EOS?
Yeah. We talk about EOS on the show quite a bit.
Yeah. So, which I think is a really effective framework to structure your business, like to bring clarity, right? That's one of their big mission points.
Yeah.
We made the investment to actually work with an implementer for a period of about a year. We're not currently doing it. I would say we're sort of self-implementing at this point, and we're mostly running on EOS, right? That's still kind of the underlying framework that we want. We're not like militant or religious about it.
Sure.
But one of the most valuable things that we got out of that EOS process was defining our core values, and then using, they've got a tool called the People Analyzer, and I have found that to be a really, really effective tool to hire, to evaluate existing people, right? The whole thing of EOS is right person, right seat, right? So in order to find, right person means they align with your cultural values and your core values of your company, right? That's the right person category. The right seat is, okay, here's the role, the definition of that role, and how well that person executes the duties of that role, right? So kind of these two components of right person, right seat. So that, it's a really easy thing to make that jump for W-2 employees, of course, right? People you're bringing in, whether they're a project manager or a attendant or a project coordinator or whatever the kind of roles you have in the company. It's really effective at vetting and finding good trade partners too, right? Like it's almost like you don't think, I didn't think of it as first, but as like, well, these guys they're just extensions of our company. They're not wearing the Bunn and Sons shirt, but they are representing us, and so
100%.
Are they the right person in the right seat? Right seat's a little bit easier to identify. It's like, hey, we have a drywall scope. Let's get the drywallers, right?
Right.
But it's very effective in vetting out and kind of helping to identify the trade partners who do share those cultural values, those core values of our company, which for us is positivity, selflessness, persistence, moral courage, and growth orientation. Those are the 5 things that we...
Can we walk through those values really quick? I think it'd be good for our listeners to kind of... one thing I love about I don't even remember anything you said just yet because we're going to dive into them, but what's great is I think that you use some different words. A lot of times I hear some what I call invisible words where it's like excellence. It's like, okay,
yeah.
Great, quality,
yeah.
Cool, and I think that you have to make your core values memorable and you have to make them unique to who you are as well. So anyways, I think that you've obviously got them memorized, which is great. So let's dive into what they are and how you chose those, what they mean.
Yeah, I agree with you on all points, right? A lot of companies have it comes up in the conversation of when, like establishing your core values is a pretty big piece of the EOS process, right? It's kind of fundamental to everything else you do in the program.
Right.
Or it's at least one of the pillars, right? And so so many, mission statements and core values and stuff, like they very easily become just kind of a poster in the break room. And it's like, well, walk around. Does anybody at this company know what they are? Are we living them? Do we display these in not just our professional life, but in our personal life? Is this who we are, right? And so, part of that is also putting some definition. What do we mean by positivity, for instance, right? So what we mean by positivity is maintaining positive attitudes and good humor, especially when we're faced with adversity, right? We're cheerful in all weather. Do we have a setback? Good. Right? Like that's our attitude, right? Like we got a challenge in front of us. Good. Right. Again, like, have you seen the Jocko t-shirt, right? He's like, it just says good with.
Oh, no, I've seen tons of his videos, but I've never, good. Okay. Makes sense. I like it.
Yeah. It's like, good. Okay, great. This is what an opportunity. Here's an opportunity for us to grow, to stretch ourselves, right? It's not like, oh, come on, man. Like give up. It's not that everybody, including myself, displays these core values every second of every day, right? We're human beings. No. Everybody has cracks.
There's something to strive for sure.
But there's something to strive for, yeah. So we have positivity, and then we have the second one that we use is selflessness. We prioritize team success over individual achievement because, when the team is successful, so is the individual. A rising tide raises all boats, right? This sort of mentality. The question to ask here is like, what's the best way for me to help my team accomplish this mission? It's about. We definitely want individuals to grow and be successful, but like, let's be honest, right? This is any organization it's a team sport, and we're no different. So right. We have to kind of prioritize that team success over personal success. Not in every single instance, right? Again, but it's got to be there consistently. The next one we have is persistence. The way that I wrote this one up is, we without persistence, we're not going to get past our front door in the morning, right? We just talked about it. I have 5 kids at home. It snowed this morning. There was an accident right outside my neighborhood, right? Like it took me 42 minutes to get over to the office where it only takes me about 10. So, wow. Okay, if I'm not persistent, I'm just like, I'm not on the podcast with Khalil this morning, right? And I'm not going to be here to do my job. We accept challenges and find ways to overcome them, right? Like we're, again, some of this stuff I tend to pull back to my military days a little bit. And so a term that I like to use is like, we're default aggressive and have a bias for action. We're not going to wait for problems to go away. We want to solve them together as a team. That's what persistence means for us. And then the fourth one is moral courage. We're going to do the right thing even when it's hard. No shortcut is worth compromising your conscience. Trust is fundamental to our team success, and it's built through the consistent practice of moral courage, right? Like, so a question we ask here is like, would I be doing this thing? Would I be making the same decision if I knew God or my parents or my boss or my spouse or my kids were watching me do this, right? Would I make the same choice, and if you can't answer those in the affirmative and say, yeah, I'd absolutely be, I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons here, that's how we define moral courage. And then the last one is growth oriented. Do you know, what's the guy's name? Earl Nightingale. Have you heard of Earl Nightingale?
It's not ringing a bell.
He wrote a book. I think the book was called The Strangest Secret. He was very big in the 70s and the 80s. He's kind of like, he's like, maybe he doesn't come up so much in our generation, but
yeah,
he defined success as the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And I've always really liked that definition of success, right? It's not
progressive realization of a worthy idea. So you progressively realize or make real a worthy idea. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Growth oriented. Okay.
So, like not just an idea, an ideal, like just a small change there at the end. But yes, it's like, so in other words, success is not a defined point in time and space where we reach it and stop, right? Like it's just this, this kind of brings us back. This will be a nice segue back into the sort of the dynamic nature of working with people, right? Nothing, you get everything where you want it, and then all this, it stays that way for about 3-4 seconds, and then it starts to degrade, right?
Yeah.
But we're always looking for ways to make ourselves and our company better, How do I become a better version of myself? How can I be a leader, a father, husband, brother, sister, wife, mother, a team member, etc. Right? These are the kind of questions that come along with that core value, right?
Yeah.
So to take this back to qualification and like finding the right people, this is how we do that, right? This is where whenever we talk to a new trade partner, and start the onboarding process with them. And of course we have trade partner agreements, there's sort of the legal mumbo jumbo that we go through as well, right? But this is really the meat of the conversation. It's like, who are these people? Do they think these are good ideas, good ideals, good core values? Like, do they espouse them in their own company and in their own lives? And if they do, chances are we're going to get along. It would be hard for them to align with us on those core values and not be at least a reasonable fit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think what you've done, and through the EOS process you do this, but core values are not unique to EOS. It's just a big part of EOS itself. I think what anybody can learn from this if they're trying to build a team is, man, if I don't have core values, I'm not establishing where I want to go as a company. I'm not establishing the type of culture that we want to have. And so I may just hire heartbeats, which I'm sure both of us have done at different points. Oh, yeah. Right? And we know how it goes. Yeah, you need a body there.
Hire heartbeats. I've never heard that one. That's a good one. Hire a heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, literally, that's what happens a lot of times. And what's hard, sometimes the heartbeat that you sometimes hire is a friend. And yeah, you guys have personal values that are great, but then you get into a work setting and those values don't mesh well, and now you've ruined a relationship. Or even worse, like thankfully, like you're still married and you have your wife working in the business, but I've seen that go the wrong way, right? And so it's really important to establish these values. And what I don't see people do enough times, they write them down, they put them on a poster, they have a meeting about it, and then they move on. But the reality is you've got to bring it back to them every single day. Whenever you see an employee doing the right thing, hey, everybody, we're in our huddle. I just want to acknowledge Juan did an incredible job of showing selflessness yesterday. Yes. I watched him do X, Y, Z, and that's exactly what we want to do. Thank you for demonstrating that, Juan. Yes. Wonderful, right? And doing that on a regular basis is what's going to instill those. I don't know, something that I was turned on to by a guy named Michael Girdley is core behaviors, which is just a further definition of your core values. And so essentially, what does persistence look like? What's a behavior that aligns with the core value persistence? And so you go out and try to list out like 10 different behaviors. What does it look like on the job site? What does it look like in customer communication? What does it look like when you get an email or whatever it is? And you write down the exact behavior. We show up, or we stay until today's scope of work is completed. That's persistence. Right. Like, and so you make it even more clear where it's rather than just like the value, it's like, hey, okay, I like that value. What are the behaviors I need to actually do on a day-to-day basis to live that out?
I like that. What did you say the guy's name? Michael Bentley?
Girdley.
Oh, Michael
He's a great Twitter follow. He's got a good YouTube channel. We've had him on our show, episode 200. And I only remember it because it was episode 200 and he was a big guest. But
and 200, that's a big one, man. That's awesome.
Well, we're coming up on 300.
What number is? Yeah,
300 is spring.
We're about 300.
So,
wow.
Yeah, so it's flying. But no, it's
How
good.
many years have you been doing this?
We started this in 2020, in the fall of 2020.
Wow.
So we actually started recording in the spring of 2020, but we launched with like 20 episodes.
Okay.
We've talked about core values. I want to get into the trade partners. So I think that's a really important thing that a lot of our listeners would can find value in is you can still put them through that process of understanding if they're the right person by going through the values. You can understand if it's the right seat pretty clearly based upon your scope and as well as their skill set for that trade partner. But what are you doing to manage that relationship? I mean, obviously they're only as loyal to you as you are able to give them work at a certain extent, right? Like if you can't give them a job, they've got to take other work. Yep. So how do you manage those relationships? Are you firing trade partners regularly? Or like, are you pruning those or no, like we keep them no matter what? Or like, how does that work for you?
These are such good questions. So I'll start with the last question and work backwards. I can't remember, you posed a few there, but like we are not regularly firing trade partners. No.
Okay. You're keeping them as long as you can.
We want these relationships to be as long lasting as possible, right? Because just like with W-2 employees, with trade partners, that like when you bring somebody new in, you're kind of starting over to a certain degree of bringing them into your culture. And you know, there's a learning curve for them to understand what it means, like what we mean by a quality project. Like what is the Bunn and Sons standard? What is the Bunn and Sons way? The first job or two we do with any trade partner, even if they're a really good fit, is usually like it's a little bumpy, right? It's like having you got a new guy on the team, right? Like they're sorry, I didn't know, you know what I mean? Like
it's like going on a first date. Dancing around.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It's really good. Now we're on that first date, like we're pretty sure we're reasonably well aligned. We have, they have confidence in us and we have confidence in them that this is going to be worth our time, but it takes time to build that up. Yeah. Some of our trade partners are guys like we're still working with some of the trade partners that I onboarded and started working with like 9 years ago when I first called, an electrician or somebody like a specialty trade. Most of those relationships have gone through some turnover over the past, it's been almost 10 years, Though I would say for our business, it's really more looking at the past 4 to 6 years is when we really got kind of focused on what we were, kind of the model that we're using now. So yeah, we don't regularly fire trade partners. We don't want to be doing that. It's not good. Turnover's tough, right? Whether it's W-2 or at trade partners.
Yeah.
The things that we try to do, the things that we focus on to maintain those trade partner relationships is, a couple of things. I think it's pretty simple, right? The first thing is, our process for a project is we've got a 2-part process. There's pre-construction development and then there's the build phase, right? So we do fixed price contracting. We do like a very granular level of project development before we go over to start tearing a place up and swinging hammers, right? So as part of that process, the trade partners they're on the team. They're part of that, right? So the first time they see a job isn't the day they're walking in there to rough it in, right? They have been on the train with us from usually from very, very early conversations with a potential client about what it would look like to do this project, The other side of that coin is we don't call those trade partners and start asking them for help on a project until we're reasonably certain that it's going to turn into a contract, right? Like we're not calling them to, hey, can you bid, sort of thing, right? And they get 2 out of 10 that we send their way or something, right? So we don't waste their time. How's that, right? We're not wasting their time. They appreciate that.
Yeah.
The other thing is this is so simple, but like we pay their invoices on time. We're not.
It's not as simple as you think.
Well, part of this, like some of this is tied back to our operational philosophy and how we operate our business. It's like we're we're not a pay when paid sort of a situation with our subs. That's not the relationship we have. It's not net 90 or net 120 or something crazy like that. It's like, you finish roughs, send us the invoice, we're going to pay you. You finish trim, finish the invoice, we're going to pay you. Or whatever progress, sort of a payment schedule we have worked out for that sub, and whatever makes sense, right? Depending on the trade. So
sounds like you have moral courage.
Yeah, well, like these guys, like they're they performed work. They deserve to be paid, right? Like they held up their end of the bargain,
And
that's a lot.
It's also pretty crazy that is a differentiator for some.
Isn't it?
Like it's wild.
So I have a thought there that I'd really like to come back to.
Let's go
later in the show.
We can go right into it. What's the thought?
Well, let me finish the thoughts about the trade partners. But the other big thing is it's a very rare circumstance for us to ask a trade partner to quote unquote sharpen their pencil, right? Or what can you do for me on this one? Sort of a thing, right? Like my numbers don't come out of thin air. I don't make it up. I'm gonna get a little vulgar here. Apologies.
That's all right.
I think there's this notion I think out there on the client side, right? Of like, you've probably heard like fuck you pricing, right? Like like I threw you the fuck you number, right? Like
right.
In other words, I've got a lot of work, and I'm not sure I want to take your job, so I'm gonna price it so like
really high to where it's only worth it. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. We could call it a PETA factor, it comes in a variety of names, but like, we don't do that. I don't do that, right? Like our jobs are like, any client that comes our way the job is priced appropriately. It's not too much and it's not too little, right? It's because we have targeted profit margins and we know the cost to operate our company, and we have the structure built around.
Yeah,
we know what we want that picture to look like, and therefore it's actually pretty easy to derive pricing, and it is what it is. I don't determine it. The client, the scope of work determines the pricing, and that flows down to the trade partner, right? If we're asking a trade partner to, the electrician needs to run a new service in here, put a sub panel, and we're going to do 12 home runs and this number of cam lights and whatever, all the stuff that comes along with an electrical scope, for instance. We say, okay, we develop that scope of work together. Like this is the right solution for that project, and the electrician tells us how much that's going to cost to do that scope of work, and we pay it. Like,
right.
It's that simple, right? It's not me going like, well, I got another bid and it was $2,000 cheaper. And it's like, personally, I don't see, like, what's the point in doing that? Like, I don't need to go around, chase, get multiple bids, and you're like, fine, like this, I've been working with this guy for years. I trust him. He does good work. If he tells me it's going to be $9,000 or $15,000 or $50,000, it's going to cost what it costs. This guy knows his numbers. He knows his business. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and if you have that's all assuming you have the right people too, like if you don't have the right trade partners, you can't always do that. It's also assuming that you know your numbers, which is, there's enough of that to not know your numbers is a big deal. It's also assuming that you're running a good business and you're maintaining healthy margins. Because if you owe money on, if you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you're receiving money on this job and you're taking the deposit and paying for the previous subs and stuff like that, that's when you definitely have to start saying, oh, well, I got a lower bid, so I'm going to take the lower bid because I've got to use that quote unquote profit to pay off other jobs. So
what makes all of that possible, what I just said, is at this point it's me. I am still the main sales point of contact. I am the aperture that a client has to pass through to get to my company and my people, and I take that job very seriously. We do 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 projects a year. We're not we're not a high volume contractor.
Right.
If anybody's curious and listening, we do, for us, that looks like, around 2 million in revenue a year. It's kind of, that's about how big we are, and whether that's 1 or 2 larger projects or 3 or 4 or 5, kind of smaller ones. But that's kind of what the picture looks like. But none of what I just explained is possible to do if I'm out there on the front end, or any salesperson is on the front end saying, oh yeah, we can do this and we can do that, like setting this wildly
unrealistic expectations,
inaccurate expectation with the client in terms of what it actually the true cost to deliver their project. Like if the client doesn't understand the true cost, and that's a 5-hour conversation, like think about the true cost of delivering what it is that we deliver in the marketplace. If the client doesn't understand that and they're not on board with it, it's none of this works. None of it works.
Well, I mean, very much
because there's not enough money.
There's not similar to the way that you vet your specialty contractors and you vet your team members. You have to vet your clients and align with them on certain values. So if you're trying to have moral courage, but your client has no moral courage, there's an obviously, you're not aligned there.
This is crazy that the thought just occurred to me, but like I have never used the people analyzer to actually qualify clients.
Oh, you 100% should.
I think maybe I should. We have a different matrix, right? I mean, like we do have we have an ideal client profile. We know the psychographic and demographic, we've got all that stuff, right? And generally it points us in the right direction. But oh my gosh, you're so right, man. Like that's
and even putting again, going back to that core behaviors. What are the core behaviors of a client that align with these core values? Because those are going to be different, obviously. What does it look like on the client side? They pay their invoice on time, little things like that. They receive bad news and say, how can we move forward? Rather than like blowing up, so.
I think a big one for us is, I try to look for those red flags early, in the form of we have a process for client qualification, right? There's a discovery call, and then there's an in-person meeting, and then maybe there's a follow-up, and then maybe there's a proposal presentation, right? Then there's a process that we go through. I can't, like in this business, like somebody calls, everybody wants to know first, like, how much is my project going to cost? They're like, well, I'm not sure. We haven't developed it yet. I don't like you're telling me you want a kitchen remodel. Well, what does that mean to you? Let's have a conversation, right? You start to flesh that out. Yeah. Anyway, the point being is that there's a process that we go through there to help the client understand. Like we want the client to be comfortable, and we want to be comfortable with each other, right? There has to be a level of comfort and trust there because we're going to be in a relationship with these people for, probably on the short end, 6 to 8 months, and on the long end, it could be a year and a half or 2 years. You know what I mean? Like these are pretty long lasting relationships. One thing that I look for in clients is, are they showing signs, or are they either sort of consciously or subconsciously doing things that are causing me to deviate from what I know is going to be best practice, right? So like, are they trying to skip over and gloss over, like the importance of project development, right? That's a big red flag. Like, I can't just send guys over your house and start ripping and tearing. That's not going to happen. What's our plan here, right? Everybody balks at price, it's not a real good, who we're looking for ultimately is like the clients that do they actually
balking at price, and there's disillusionment in price.
Oh, that's a good way to say it.
It would be, it's not like everyone out there is not worried about their budget. Like that may even be a red flag if they're like, oh yeah, cool. Like, are you really operating on a budget here? So like people should be balking at price, but there's disillusionment of like, oh, I thought this was going to be $5,000, or, like there's just completely, and so that's how I would categorize that.
That's really good. Thank you for, that's a really good juxtaposition, sort of a definition of terms, right? Yeah.
You want your clients to be aware of a budget.
Absolutely.
It means that they've actually thought about the project and they actually understand, and they're like committed to this process. If they're putting money aside for this, they know their number, and obviously they're going to be price conscious, but that means that they have diligence, that they're good people to work with,
Well, there's another differentiation there, perhaps, right? Like, are they price conscious or are they value conscious, right? Like
absolutely.
Everybody should be value conscious, right? And ultimately they're the ones who make the decision about what's the most valuable for them, what's the best bang for their buck, and that's our job to help them make those decisions. And so, I don't want to go too far afield, but but yes, part of this, there's these like, the right people means that we have the right clients, the trade partners, the employees, right? The whole, this mix of all these different stakeholders on, to make this successful is, it's kind of particular, right? It's a fairly, at this point I would say it's not like I know the recipe, but because of the difficulties that you face in each one of those categories, as a leader, right, as the founder, as the owner of this, and my wife too, like we kind of share these responsibilities. She's not so much public, forward facing, but like we struggle with like, there's a constant temptation for even us to deviate from what we know to be best practice because it was like, oh, like it could be a little easier, or maybe we don't need to, like we can overlook this or that, and it's like sometimes you can get away with that, right? There has to be a level of flexibility, which it's funny. Sorry, little side caveat. We actually have considered either adding or modifying one of our core values to speak to flexibility, right? It's like we're persistent to a point, like there's a point of diminishing returns with everything, right?
We have two core values that are kind of similar, and one is make it work, which I would say is fairly persistence, right? Then the other one is change is certain. Like,
yeah, I like
that's
that.
the reality is change it. Like you don't want to be persistently moving against change because change is certain in everything. Like the market changes, people don't want to do custom builds. They want to do additions because of interest rates. Change is certain, right? People don't want to do additions because interest rates change again. And if we do custom builds, okay, we're going to that. Like change is certain. We don't want to be persistent. I guess we don't want to be stubborn is I guess what you want to say there. We want to be persistent, but not stubborn.
I love that, Khalil. I love it. There as a leader, there's a constant temptation for me to. I think the biggest one is on the client side, right? When things get a little lean, like they did at the end of 2024, 2025 turned out to be a pretty good. It was a good year for us, right? But there's been. Let's just say that I think everybody can agree that there's been a level of volatility and uncertainty that we weren't seeing 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, and so that has put me in a position more than once, as the front man, sales and client vetting to want to be like, maybe we could make this work, but it's you have to be very careful with that because this. Whether it's a client or a trade partner, you bring these people, these stakeholders into this equation, into these relationships. You now have to expose everyone else in that equation. Like they're gonna have to deal with each other,
Yeah.
And it's very easy to burn a lot of relationship capital with your team when you bring a bad client on board.
Absolutely.
What I mean?
and it's not even just a bad client. It's a bad person in general, a hire, a contractor, whatever it is. I mean, you can even, ones you can't control as much, a city official for permitting or something like that. Like that can be the bad person who can really throw a wrench in things. It can be even the banker who's funding the project. I mean, it truly is like there needs to be vetting all around. I want to wrap with this, Tom. I think, you started as kind of a handyman, like you said, because you're good with your hands, and all of a sudden now you're becoming a psychologist and working with different people and finding different values and personalities and all this kind of stuff and putting them all together. And I want to just talk about margin, not necessarily profit margin or gross margin, but even just time margin and capacity margin for you as an individual. Mm-hmm. I'm of the belief that without margin in our lives and in our businesses, we can't effectively make good decisions and think about our values and stick to our values and all this kind of stuff. And it's almost like what you said, as things get lean, you start to maybe want to differ from your values and take on that client.
It's temptation.
What are the ways that you protect margin and instill margin into your life and your business? What are things that you try to do to protect that?
It's a really good question. It's kind of baked in. There's so many things. Like it's baked into the. I think, the biggest thing, honestly, Khalil, is staying honest and true to those core values or best practices that we know after almost 10 years of doing this. Like we know what works and we know what doesn't work. And if you don't have the moral courage, the fortitude to say no to the wrong opportunities so that you can say yes to the right ones, I think that's the big one, right? Because the right opportunities, right? The right people, whether they're employees, trade partners, clients, when we have the right people, which for us, thankfully, like is most of the time, right? Like we actually, I think we've done pretty well. We've been pretty disciplined about how we're doing this. We're not perfect by any means, but we've been pretty disciplined about that. So most of the time we do have that right mix. And when we do, my margins of time and sanity are protected. Like I consider myself to be a pretty blessed guy. I have surrounded myself with, I have attempted to surround myself with good people that I trust and they trust me, and I want to be as good and as giving as I can be to everyone who comes into this contact with this company. Our core focus, right back to EOS, is like we're building better lives. That's our intent. It's not just projects. It's not just sticks and bricks. What we're trying to do is build better lives, and that means that I want my superintendent and my project manager and my trade partners and my clients, I want them to have margins in their lives too. In order to do that, we have to be disciplined about how we operate. And I think that the biggest thing is saying yes to the right things and saying no to the wrong things. Saying no to that's not an opportunity. That's an opportunity for somebody. It's not an opportunity for us, and that requires a pretty high level of discipline, I'll say it sometimes, especially on my part. It kind of, again, it's nice when things are going well and people want to give you credit, as the leader, and like, wow, like it looks like you got a good thing going there, right? But I have to be just as ready to accept the other side of that coin, right? When things aren't going well, guess whose fault it is? There's nobody else around here to blame, so yeah, I think. I think saying yes to the right things and saying no to the wrong things, that is what I think that's one of the biggest things that anybody can do to create margin in their life.
That's great. Yeah, you have to have your best yes, and I think that is really good. It's how you're going to protect your margin in so many different areas, and it's how you're going to protect your sanity and your people. I think with building better lives, it's not just about your clients, but it's also about your team and your trade partners, right?
Everybody.
And so the fear of missing out, FOMO, is going to kill that opportunity to build better lives, because you'll say yes to things that you shouldn't be saying yes to, So, yeah.
I find that can I have like one additional thought to that?
Yeah, let's wrap it up for us.
And I think this I could wrap up back to that point that I said I wanted to address
the
earlier.
Differentiator.
And this is kind of a nice, we'll put a bow on it. Is that I find that a lot of people that we hire as W-2 employees or we bring in as 1099 trade partners, most of them, if they have we're working with generally experienced people in the trades, in the construction industry. Like we're not the schoolhouse. I'm not the guy who can hire someone fresh, who wants to learn construction. Like I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I can't. Again, like I got to say no to that, right? Or else it's going to be bad for everybody. But what I find is that people with any level of experience in this industry come to us in a state that I'll describe loosely as sort of like a battered wife, right? Like this industry has just, I think it's just become far too commonplace for general contractors, tradespeople, builders, whoever, it's kind of this whole spectrum of folks that I this world that I'm in, to be undervalued, overworked, stressed out, and just kind of like their entire existence is a reactive, like dumpster fire after dumpster fire, because nobody had the right expectation about the true cost of what it was going to take to do it. Nobody was realistic about timelines. Nobody was realistic about the actual, like, the amount of planning that needs to go into something like a project, whether it's a new build or a remodel. Like it's all just, none of it is necessary, in my opinion, too, right? Like, it's just stop. Like, we don't have to do it this way, And so, so I find that a lot of people are they're almost cautiously, they're wary of, like, like on the surface, what I talk about is like, wow, that's great, but like, sure, I've heard that before, and so I guess what all that sort of feeds up into is, what I hear from clients or potential clients frequently is, or when we talk to marketing people, right? They're like, oh, it sounds like you're really, this is concierge. This is really like high level stuff. And I'm like, I guess that's the perception, right? I guess that's what it must appear to be from the outside. But honestly, Khalil, it's like all we're doing, on the business side, I'm not doing anything that any successful business entrepreneur has ever not done, right? Like
you're not reinventing the wheel.
We're just following the basic rules, generally accepted accounting practices and what's a P&L. Like, I mean, these things have to, that's all we're doing,
Well, and I think to that point, I think you're right. And I think it's honestly a big part of why we have this podcast is the barrier to entry is so low in the construction industry to start a business and to start doing projects that a lot of these general practices that you think are table stakes people are completely unaware of them. And so they have to, and you would probably even say for yourself as a handyman, you had no idea about EOS.
That's correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah. 9 years ago. Yeah.
And so you have people entering the industry all the time, undercutting prices on the more experienced companies, winning jobs, and then not being able to do good enough work or not being able to hit the numbers on the job. And now they get into, but they are, and another problem here is the financing aspect of this. They're able to get debt financing for their business to keep it afloat, which further exacerbates the problem and causes all these mental health issues and causes people being undervalued, overworked. I think that's really the cycle, is that it's a low barrier to entry in the construction industry. You can get financing for a new truck, for a business loan from QuickBooks and these predatory loans, and you can start, and you can bring in cash from these deposits, but just because you bring in cash doesn't mean you're actually profitable, that you actually can afford what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is the start of it, right? That's
agreed.
It's true. You're differentiating yourself just by doing common basic business practices.
That's we're just by just following best practice. Like we're not perfect, right? I mean, we make mistakes too, you know what I mean?
All the
But
time.
Somehow we're able to basically almost without exception, every client we've worked for has or would give us a 5-star review. And the even before I was able to verbalize it, right? To kind of to talk like I've just talked for the last 54 minutes. I'm sorry, we're probably going too long here, but that's always just been the kind of the underlying goal, whether I knew to verbalize it or not. We've just been chasing best practice. I've just always looked at it as well, there's, is that the best way to do this? Or is it the right way to do it? And it's it's something that I've really just kind of it sounds like you've probably arrived here before I have. You articulated that thought really well. I think what you just said was perfectly said. That it's just, wait a minute, how is it that all we're doing is table stakes? These things that are just table stakes. These are just kind of they're just the way things need to be done. That's actually a differentiator that puts us into a category of looking like concierge, high-end, luxury, kind of experience. It's dang.
Yeah.
I think it says something about the industry. And so we're doing our best to try to raise the bar for everybody. And hopefully that's a good thing for both, people in the industry and clients as well. Again, we want to build better lives, for everybody. I want that for people. So,
yeah. Well, and just because it's table stakes does not mean it's easy. I don't want to, just because something is maybe simple, I don't want to act like that's, oh, well, why aren't you doing that? It's so easy. I understand.
Fair.
There's real challenges there. It's really hard to win a job at the right price because people are price conscious. It's really hard to manage people because they're on drugs and they don't show up for work when they said they would, and you hired them and they haven't answered a call for 2 weeks. There's real challenges as a small business owner. I don't want to act like these things are easy. I just want to point out that they don't need to be, simple is not easy, but there are some things that need to be done that you can do that are simple, and you have to work towards those diligently and have persistence, and you'll be able to achieve them. And wow, we're doing really well. We're high end, we're luxury, and we're not really doing anything complicated, but we're working really hard at it.
Thank you for saying that. Simple does not mean easy, right?
Not at all.
Pricing is simple, right? You've got direct costs, indirect costs, and then a margin on top of it, right? I mean, that's what I know people might account differently, but that's basically it, right? It's like, but if you don't know what is a direct cost, what's an indirect cost, what should my margin be? What are my numbers, right? Is sort of the generalized question that we ask there. If you don't know that, then that very, like, that sort of simple thing becomes like, oh, like that's kind of, this is the kind of stuff that I think most contractors, like myself included, like it's not the most fun thing, there's other people like, do I have to, like do that kind of stuff. A lot of guys in this industry, they want to build, they want to create, they want to get swinging the hammer. I want to see this thing come up, and that's the fun part that everybody wants to see. And, but to make it sustainable and to make it work for, for me, my family, our employees, trade partners, everybody that is in our universe here, to make that work for us, I've got to be disciplined. It starts at the top. I got to be disciplined about following those best practices and knowing, like, doing things the right way, the way they need to be done, not just taking, pushing the easy button and doing, too many of those shortcuts, because it doesn't end well,
Yeah.
Somebody pays the price somewhere along the line, for sure.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
This has been such a great conversation. I love what this has been so fun, Khalil.
Well, I'm so glad you could join. I appreciate it. I hope that our listeners enjoyed the conversation. I know I did. I think there's a lot of value in here, and we'd love to have you back on sometime, Tom.
I'd be happy to do it. Yeah, I'd be happy to do it. So, you let me know if there's anything I could do for you as well.
Okay. Appreciate it, Tom. Have a good one.
All right. Have a good day.
You made it to the end of the episode, but before you go, if you found yourself thinking about growing your construction business while listening today, I want to share something with you. It's called our 24 Things to Hiring and Training the Perfect Executive Assistant for Your Construction Business. And it's a free guide that we've created. It's not theory. It's what we actually use to help contractors hire the perfect executive assistant. And really, we help you find ways to delegate over 50% of your current workload and get back 20 hours of your time every single week. You didn't start your construction business to just be doing admin work, to be buried in paperwork and endless admin tasks. This is the guide that shows you exactly how to find and train someone who can actually take all that weight off of your shoulders. So this is a real actionable, great PDF that has templates and processes. It's really, really great. And I want you to check it out, even just to get your feedback and how we can make it even more valuable. But I know that you're gonna love it. The link is in the show notes. Please download it. We'd love to see how much of an impact it makes on you and your business. Thanks for listening to the full episode. Check out the guide. It's free. No reason to hesitate. No reason to wait. Download it now. And before you go, I just want to ask for your gracious subscription to our podcast. So if you have 2 seconds, it means the world to us. Just subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or if you'd like our weekly newsletter delivered to your inbox whenever we release an episode, please subscribe in the show notes. Every week, we're talking about real strategies on how you can grow and build a profitable construction business that runs without you, so you can have less stress, more time, and more money. Click subscribe wherever you listen to the show, and thank you again for checking out The Cashflow Contractor. See you on the next episode.